Hey, welcome back. It's been about 90 degrees in New York for the past few days, so I'm going to be making a light, refreshing gazpacho and some not-so-traditional toppings that will transport your taste buds to summertime. So to get started, I have about a kilo of tomatoes here. These are the plum tomatoes, but you could use anything that you have. I'm just going to cut these guys in half and try and core them a little bit. You don't want to really remove the seeds, or you don't have to, but you do want to get rid of basically the central stem, because that's a bit tough and a bit flavorless usually. Then we're going to go ahead and dice these into 1 centimeter cubes. You don't have to chop them that small, but my food processor has a tough time getting vegetables pureed as thinly as I want them to. And I'm going to go ahead and prep all of my vegetables and basically all the ingredients beforehand, just for ease of filming for myself. But you can go ahead and, as you're doing this, throw them directly in your food processor. Next up, I've got some bread. Now, a lot of recipes don't call for this, but a lot of them do as well. It's meant to change the texture, thicken it up a little bit. Now, this isn't the best bread, and if you've got a nice baguette, go ahead and use that. It should be a few days old, should be a little bit hard, and if it is, then you want to soak it in a little bit of water. This one's a little bit soft, it's lightweight, so I'm just going to roll with it. Now we need about 50 grams of bread, about 20. About 50. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that into nice cubes, just so it's easy work for the food processor. Now this looks like a lot of bread. This is a very light and airy bread. If yours is more of a rustic, thick, crusty baguette, then 50 grams will probably be about half that. That's why we go by weight instead of dimensions for certain things. And we also want some nice croutons for the top of this, so I'm gonna go ahead and cube up another 30 grams or so. You can go by dimension here. I'm gonna do 1 centimeter cubes. Throw those in a bowl, and I'm going to go ahead and toss them with a little bit of olive oil. I always like to season my croutons a little bit, so throw a little bit of salt on top of there. Stir that on in. Throw those guys on a tray, spread out nice and evenly. And we can go ahead and toast these guys. Until they're nice and crispy. Next up, I've got some garlic. Now, traditional recipes call for 1 clove, because apparently you don't want too much of that garlic flavor coming through. I beg to differ. We just want to peel these. So you press down with your knife. And that should release the paper, depending on how old these cloves are, because the younger it is, sometimes it's a little bit tricky to peel. And then again, depending on the age of your garlic, we want to remove that central germ. Now these are old enough that you can actually see it. See that central stem, and it's starting to poke its head out right there. And that just adds a lot of bitterness to the garlic. And in a raw preparation like this, you definitely want to get rid of it. But again, if they're young garlics, young cloves of garlic, they won't be very visible, easy to remove, or in that case, very strong. So, you can see these are kind of small. So this is a teenage garlic. But as they get older, that gets much bigger as the individual clove is ready to turn into a plant. It's trying to get away. Wants to break free. Teenage garlics. Alright, I've got a green bell pepper, and I like to prep this. I call this the chefy way, because this is what I've seen chefs doing. You just chop off either end, you're left with this nice cylinder, and then you can just chop out the middle of it, just like that. I said just like that. And, you can peel out the rest of the ribs if anything is left over, but it should be minimal. So you're left with this. With the cap, you can just push it through leaves this hole, and this is all edible. This is not, I mean it is, but you don't want to eat it. And that end is perfectly edible too. So we're just gonna dice this. Again, I'm gonna go, you know, maybe a centimeter, half a centimeter, just to make it easy for my food processor. If you're in the same situation as me, do the same thing. If you've got better tools than I do, then I'm very jealous. Then you cut this like that, and it turns into these little sheets. And if you were just doing matchsticks, it's the easiest way to do it. But for us, we can just stack these guys up and continue to dice them. Now this is not traditional, but in the summertime especially, I like a little bit of heat in my food. So I'm gonna add in 1 jalapeno. And for these, you can put a little slice in and then start to roll it. And you should get most of that central seed pod out. There we go. Try and get the seeds out, not because we don't want the heat, but because we don't want the texture. Next up, I've got a cucumber. You can use the smaller ones if that's your preference, but I'm gonna go for a large one. I don't mind cucumber. I think it'll add a nice freshness. I'm gonna remove the seeds since this is a seedy one, but if you're using the smaller ones, not necessary. Cut that into similar sized pieces, 1 centimeter cubes. Alright, so get out your trusty blending implement of choice. And into it we will throw our vegetables, starting with the tomatoes. Oh wow, that's not gonna fit. Alright, so I'm gonna work in half batches then. Half of your cucumbers, half of your peppers, a clove of garlic, 25 grams of bread, and just to get things moving, I'm going to go ahead and puree this now. Now I'm going to add in 45 mils of olive oil, although I'm going to add half of that right now, so it's 3 tablespoons. So a tablespoon and a half to each half of the gazpacho that I'm doing. Is that overly complicated? About a half a teaspoon of salt, about a pinch, and about 15 milliliters of vinegar. So 30 milliliters for the whole batch. And if you've got sherry vinegar, that would be more traditional. I'm just using a basic white wine vinegar. Throw the top back on. Now some recipes call for this to be strained through a sieve. That makes for a thinner soup, but I'm gonna opt out because we got it nice and thin with our food processor, and I think that would defeat the purpose of putting it into bread, but then you wouldn't get those little flecks of green from the peppers and the cucumber. So I think holding off, while it may or may not be the most traditional thing, does make for a more interesting mouthfeel and visual presentation. So it's up to you. You do what you wanna do. Now we can ladle this into a bowl. Put those crunchy croutons, a few extra slices of jalapeno for heat, and this is totally not traditional, but I like to add a little chiffonade of mint, and some crumbled feta cheese. Man, that is just what I needed on this hot summer day. You've got that bold tomato flavor, but it's lightened up by the cucumber. Got a little bit of background heat from the jalapenos, a nice bit of texture from those croutons, and the addition of the mint and the feta create these refreshing and briny flavors that pair really well with this light summery soup. So I hope you guys give this a try. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button because I've got new international experiments out every week. So I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.